Hello, I am Sarah from Homespun Childhood. I am a former teacher turned homeschool mom of 3, and I share things all about curriculum and books and our unit studies and homeschool planning and just all of the different things. So please definitely go ahead and subscribe below and hit that bell for notifications. Let's jump into this. Today I am going to be sharing a walkthrough of the new Singapore Math Primary 2022 Kindergarten Level A. I have also done a walkthrough of Math with Confidence by Kate Snow in a separate video if you would like to compare the two. I have not used this level of the new Primary 2022 yet. However, I have used Year 1 and I really enjoyed it. If you are curious about what Year 1 looks like, I do have another video for that. And I have a video comparing dimensions with Primary 2022 and a video comparing the teacher guide of Primary 2022 with the Home Instructor's Guide. I ended up choosing the teacher's guide for a variety of reasons. However, both guides are a good fit. All right, so let's look at the different components of Kindergarten Primary Math 2022. So we have the teacher's guide here. You do need either the teacher guide or the instructor's guide, home instructor's guide. This is not a program that you can use without the guides. You will lose the benefit of the program. The also required material for this is the student book. Unlike Dimensions, Primary 2022 has the student textbook and workbook combined into one book. Some optional add-on books are the Primary Mastery and Beyond. These are some additional practice for extension of the material. They do not have, a page per lesson. It's more like a couple different practices per chapter. They also have an additional practice book if you need that. It is in black and white. And then they have an assessment guide. A quick note about the assessment guide. If you purchase the assessment guide, I would not write in this so that you can use this, throughout many children. You can print off all of the assessments with your online access code. The instructor's guides also include online access. That's where you can print your resources and your extension lessons. All right, let's look at what the teacher guide looks like, okay? So right when we jump in, we have the background of the Singapore Math approach. So going through, what is Singapore Math? They have some nice little graphics. We have the key characteristics of Singapore Math, the concrete pictorial abstract method, visual models, problem solving, mathematical and perceptual variations, learning progression, and then differentiation and assessment. Again, lots of background information here. This might be too much information for a homeschool parent. As a former teacher, I kind of like this aspect, and I really like having, the full color background. I would rather have more information and take and pick what I need than less information. However, that is just my personal style. The phases of learning, the mastery, the readiness, the engagement, and the mastery. And then they kind of go through what the chapters will look like, and these little blue boxes tell you the different components of a lesson. If you have not taught math before and you have not taught Singapore Math before, this is really helpful, and I would highly encourage you to read through all of this before you begin teaching. We have a little bit of information about the guide, about the different features, which we'll go into in a minute. Okay, just a breakdown of what each of the different pages look like and why they are there. All right, then they provide the scope and sequence for kindergarten through 2nd grade. So the columns are the different grades, and then we have the different topics broken down into subtopics. This is nice because you can see the progression. You can see what is being taught in kindergarten and then where that is headed into the next grade levels. And it keeps going and going and going and going. All right, let's look at our table of contents. The kindergarten primary 2022 is broken up into 2 levels. Like most Singapore curricula, we have A and B for your first half and your second half of the year. All right, so these are the topics covered in Book A. We have counting and more counting and more counting, numbers to 5. We have writing and counting, numbers to 5. We have numbers to 10, 6 to 10, ordering numbers. Then we go through shapes, both solid and flat shapes, and positioning. And we have comparing numbers to 10. And then that is the end of the first half. Let's look at the first chapter. We have count and show numbers to 5. It tells you the cross grade progression. So looking back, well, it's kindergarten, so we don't have a looking back. The first grade component does have a piece here for what was taught in kindergarten, or what a child should have learned in kindergarten. We have what is going to be in this lesson, and then we have looking ahead to chapter 2. Each chapter is set up the same way. We have our chapter overview, the key ideas, the concrete pictorial abstract progression, and then the chapter progression. We have our chapter at a glance. It tells you the total number of days in a chapter. Not every chapter has the same number of days. And then it goes through your different lessons. The chapters in Singapore Math are broken up into different sections. We have the chapter opener, and often that includes a recall section. And then sometimes the chapters are broken up into different sections that they label with letters. So this is chapter 1, section A, count and show. And then you have a couple lessons there. Count and show, a couple more lessons. Then we have section B, count and order. And then we end all of the chapters with a chapter wrap up and a performance task. The beginning of chapter 1, all of the chapters have this peer-to-peer activity section in the kindergarten level. And these are some activities that you could do with your child. Your child could also do this with a sibling. Again, this is a teacher guide, so a lot of these are written for a classroom. However, you can adapt them for your homeschool. The homeschool instructor's guide has a different modification of these different activities. Okay, then we go into our chapter opener, which is all about the readiness portion of the learning. So we have the opener. The blue is what you say. The pink is what the child could say. They do include components that would be useful in a classroom setting, such as English language support. I like that they have this promoting growth section. We know a lot about the importance of math mindset through Jo Boaler's work. If you have not read her book, Mathematical Mindset, I highly recommend it. I will link it below. And then we have some best practice comments. Okay, then we go into days 2 and 3. Counting and showing. This is count and show lesson 1, count and show 1 and 2. Okay, so here is our first lesson, count and show. We're learning about numbers 1 and 2. The student would have their book open to this learn page. All of the lessons go through this same process where you have a learn. This is the teacher or you, the parent, talking with your student. Again, it is scripted. They have some best practice here about writing the numbers, showing the numbers in different formations and with your hands. They have an activity. There is a Learn Together section in the workbook. Again, more talking about learning together, additional support, little call out box if you need additional support. If you need an extension, it calls your attention to an extension that can be found on the teacher online database. And then a lesson debrief. It walks through the practice on your own pages that are in the workbook. We'll go through that in a minute. Again, extensions and additional support. There is this differentiated instruction section, which is really nice if you need additional support or additional practice or extension. It tells you where to find the different components for each of those levels of differentiation. And then we move into the next lesson, following the same format. I'm going to flip through this and then we'll stop at the end of the chapter and look at the performance task. This is a lot of information if you are, really into the idea of primary mathematics. If you don't feel overwhelmed with this level of information where you kind of need to pick and choose the parts that are important to you, then this might be a good fit. If you're looking at this and thinking, oh boy, that is a lot going on the page, I don't even know where to begin, I am overwhelmed, then I would recommend looking at my video on Kate Snow's Math with Confidence. I will say that the Singapore programs, if you're looking at all the different ones, they all kind of follow this same level of busyness on the page. There are some nice breakdowns there's a homeschooling with Singapore Math Facebook group that is really helpful. And again, I have a video that compares dimensions and primary 2022. All right, here we are at the chapter wrap up. So we have we're in the mastery little section of our loop now. We have the wrap up, making sure what your students know before the wrap up, additional support, the English language support, and the performance task. Every chapter in primary 2022 concludes with a performance task. So right now it's showing you the student pages and a little bit of background about the questions and what you can be asking. And then a rubric. The rubrics are, they have one for you for scoring, and they have a rubric for the children, which I really like. Again, this is kind of checking our work and thinking about our math and bringing in this whole idea of math mindset. And then we move into the next chapter. Let's flip to a chapter at the end of this, and then we will look at the other resources, including the workbook. So here is the last chapter in KA. Again, this is a two component program, so you would need KA and KB for a full kindergarten year. We have the same looking back, looking here, and looking ahead. Our chapter overview. Our chapter at a glance. There are 16 days in this lesson. We have a couple different sections here, the opener, the more than, the fewer than, and then we also have additional sections here, C, D, E. And then our chapter wrapped up and a cumulative assessment. The kindergarten program does not have an assessment at the end of each chapter. There are cumulative assessments for every 2 to 3 chapters. Again, we have our peer-to-peer activities. We have our chapter opener. And then we move into our lessons, following the same format. Here is the performance task for the end of chapter 5, which is comparing numbers to 10. These are like word problems. In kindergarten, they're not as heavy on the word problem aspect, but it is, kind of thinking about the content covered in a big, kind of picture, real world application way. And then we move into the glossary. All right, let's look at some of the additional materials. You would definitely need the student book for this program. The guide and the book are required. In my opinion, the guide is required. Some people might question that. Okay, so here is your student book. Again, unlike dimensions, you have one student book. The textbook and the workbook are combined. There is a nice little table of contents and kind of welcome section. For a kindergarten student, this is still more for the parent, but as you get to the older grades, this would be useful for a student who, is going to be working through this more independently to know the setup of the lessons. Here is our chapter opener. This chapter opener page goes along with the chapter opener section in your teacher guide, which has questions for you to ask your child about this page. But generally, it's kind of a look and talk type activity. Why do we count? Oh, let's see, what can we count on here? Oh, there's, 5 little cars on the train, and, different things. Then each lesson has the same structure. We have our learn section. So this is where you're doing your explicit teaching. There are, scripts and questions to ask in the teacher guide, but this is what your child and you are looking at together. We have the learn together. So this is the we do section. If we're following a scaffolding model of I do, we do, you do, this is your I do, explicit teaching. This is your we do, we're learning together. And then this is the you do, the practice on your own section. And then we move into the next lesson. My biggest critique about this workbook and the program is that it is not very clearly labeled on the top as to what lesson it is. It is written down here on the bottom in fine print, but just know that every time you see the word learn, that is a new lesson. Again, our learn together, practice on our own. So every lesson is following the same format. At the end of the chapter, you have your performance task. Okay, again, you would be working through this kind of next to your child. You would be using the guiding information in the teacher or home instructor's guide. And then we move into our next chapter. Let's look to the end for the last chapter in Primary 2022 KA. Again, you would need KB to finish out this program. Again, same format. We have our chapter opener, and then we move right into the learn section. Learn together. And the practice on your own. We also have that performance task at the end. All of these pages are perforated if you are somebody who likes to pull them out and use a folder system or a binder system. Then they have this really nice glossary here. If you are someone who likes to notebook for math, this would be a fun thing to figure out how to add in. I kind of wish they weren't double-sided so that you could, cut them out and paste them in, but you could pull them out and make a copy of them. And then there are a few cutouts at the end that you need for a couple lessons. So that is the student book. There are a couple of extra resources. I only have 2 of the 3 that are available. They have the Mastery and Beyond for KA. This is a Mastery and Beyond book. It is for the student. It is in full color. There are several practices per chapter. The practice is not correlated to a lesson. So it's not, lesson 1, practice 1. Depending on the chapter, there might be a practice per lesson or there might not be. These follow the same general format of the practice on your own section. Let's look at the end. Mastery and Beyond, compare numbers to 10. This is practice 1 for chapter 5. Okay, and then it has the answers for it. So they have a Mastery and Beyond book for level A and level B. There is also a additional practice book that is in black and white and has additional practice for each lesson. On the Teacher Online Resource Hub, they also have extensions that you can print out for most lessons. All right. We also have an assessment guide. They have the assessment guides per grade level, so you would only need 1 guide for all of kindergarten. Unlike the other grade levels, kindergarten does not include an assessment for each chapter. Instead, they have cumulative assessments that are after every 2 to 3 chapters. And it says to enable that educators have an overall picture of students' ongoing progress. So there are 5 cumulative assessments for the entire kindergarten year. These are in black and white. You are provided with the blackline printable versions of this online. I would recommend not writing in this in case you want to resell it later, as you can just print them out. It also has this nice interview question section, especially for kindergarten, where you're, using the concrete items in front of you and kind of checking off, can they do this? Especially for things like shapes, right? Like looking at a cube and a cylinder on a page is very different than like having it laid out in front of you and you kind of pick and point. So this is very developmentally appropriate for the kindergarten age. All right, so that is the primary 2022 kindergarten level A curriculum. This is the program that I will be using this upcoming year with my daughter, who will be starting her kindergarten year. As you can see, going through all of this, you really don't need a lot of information before kindergarten. And for many homeschooling families, a lot of this will feel like review because, you've already been counting and writing numbers through play and all of that. However, I do think it's important to build these foundational math skills and kind of start with an intentional scope and sequence. So based off of the experience that I have had with the different homeschool curricula, this is one of my recommendations. I also recommend the Kate Snow Math with Confidence program, and there are lots of other programs out there that may or may not be a good fit for your family. These are just what work for us. If you want to compare different curriculums and figure out what might be the best fit for you, Kate Snow does have a curriculum guide comparison on her website that I will link below. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comment section and I will try to get back to you in a timely fashion.